Hello. So today I'm going to be discussing the basics of some of the basic endgames. This will be the first of a few videos because of my account not being verified. Therefore, I have to make the videos less than 10 minutes or less than 15 minutes. And when I tried to fit all of them, it came out to around 18 minutes. So hopefully this will be helpful. Today we'll be discussing endgames using the king and rooks. First, we'll be starting off with 2 rooks, and then we'll get into one rook after that. These are some endgames that you really should know, and if you want to progress in chess, and simply knowing them, even though this situation doesn't occur all too often, just knowing that when push comes to shove, you can end the game is a massive confidence booster, and frankly will give you a bit of confidence to actually go for things and be a bit more risky, which, though maybe not beneficial necessarily at the beginning, can be more fun. And at the end of the day, it's a game. Let's have some fun with this. So it's white to move. First thing you want to do is you're trying to checkmate your king, the enemy, or the black king in this position. You're white in this situation. So what you want to do is you want to try and limit the amount of squares that the black king has, i.e. preventing him from escaping. So currently, he can move to any one of these squares. Now, let's try and cut that off by that's not what I intended to do. You move your rook up. And like here, you see that before he could move to all these squares, but now he can't move to any of the squares here because the rook blocks it. And as you can see, the rook kind of creates these walls that prevent the king from entering. Now, the king's a normal person. The king attacks the rook. So you can see the king only moves one square at a time, whereas the rook can move many squares, so you can just outrun the king and run away. Now, king makes a move. You want to push your rook down. You want to just slowly wall off the king and push him back towards the edge of the board. Now, go over, and the king goes over to attack the rook, and here's where you could make a pretty substantial blunder. You're still going to win the game, but it would prolong the game by an unnecessary amount of moves. Here, you want to move your rook to one of these 2 squares. One of them is a mistake, and the other is perfectly normal. I'll give you a moment to try and think about which one's the mistake. For those who are able to find it, this one was the mistake. The reason is you want to keep the rook staggered so that this rook has the open file in order to move and properly checkmate the king after literally any move. Let's go back. If you had moved all the way over here, there would be no open file for this rook to go, and even to go down. And even if you moved over, you're just going to end up in this little goose chase over here. So make sure the rooks are staggered. In these endgames with 2 rooks, you never want to have your rooks on the same file nor on the same rank. Files are up and down, ranks are side to side. Okay. Now let's show it again, but side to side. We're going to checkmate along the files instead of being along the ranks for this one. Now, we're going to do the same thing as before. Or just not that there. And then again, you see, you never want your rooks to be on the same file nor on the same rank. You see this one's on the F file, the 8th rank, whereas this one's on the G file on the 7th rank. And now, no matter what black plays, you just move down. You move the rook down, and it delivers checkmate. And again, you can kind of, well, you might not usually end up in this position where you have the 2 rooks against the king and just your king and there's no other pieces on the board. That's not even possible. It is important to know this because especially it can help you understand that the rook can prevent the king from moving into the game. So you can essentially wall off the king while your king has free range over the board to do whatever. Now, let's say that this one's a bit more, let's say that the game went a bit more, let's be honest, realistically. And you only have 1 rook and your king. Well, now your king and rook need to work together in order to checkmate the black king. And again, we want to use our rook in order to block the king off so that he has less and less squares to go to until eventually we can checkmate the king. But we will need to use, but since we won't have the other rook in order to block, in order to check the opponent, in order to check the king while walling things off, we will need to use our king for this. So, first move for white is we move down. We're just trying to eliminate as many squares as possible from the black king, so he can't come to any of these squares. Now, black moves over, and we want to move our king up into the position. We want to get our king very close because our king will be very important here. That's not even possible. Moves over, and now if your rook's ever being attacked, just move it away. But in this situation, you kind of want to keep your rook close to your king. So king starts attacking. Of course, he's got nothing better to do than to try and go after your rook, because that would be because then that would be a draw by insufficient material, meaning that no side can actually do anything to the other because no one has enough stuff to do to actually do it. So he moves down, but now you're in time to defend your rook. And now he can't go here, and this rook's covering this, so the only move he has is here. And as he moves over, you move over. And now let's say he tries to be sneaky and go back, and he wants to get this weird kind of draw by repetition of you just moving back and forth. If he moves over here, then what you want to do is you want to move your rook all the way over, just as far away from the king as possible. Now, the black king has two moves here. We'll go with the move that prolongs the game a bit longer so that it's a bit more instructional. So let's say he moves down. Now you want to follow the king a little bit, and then the king's only legal moves are to go, these are the only legal moves he has are these three squares. Now, black wants to prolong this game as long as possible to make you, in order to force you to make a mistake. So he moves over. Now you can see that the king is blocking off the squares that the other king would use in order to retreat. So you would move your rook up. Now, I'll just use this for a bit of an example. Basically, you want to keep moving along with the king until you get to a position where your kings are standing essentially one next to one right in front of the other, staring each other down, and it's your move as white, or your move as the side with the rook. And then you move the rook down, and now you can see the king can't move to any of these squares. So he's forced down. And now you move down as well. And as he starts moving over, you want to just keep following the king. Now he moves over, and again, you just keep following. If he goes back, we're just going to pull the same thing as normal. Just be faster than him. And now moves over. Again, we're going to move over. And we're going to move over. We're trapping him in so he can't leave. Now the only legal move for black to play is to move over, and then we deliver the beautiful checkmate of moving down to h8 in this position. As you can see, our king blocks off these squares, and our rook slices perfectly across. Now, these endgames are important to know because if you ever get into this position, it means you won't just, fiddle around with 50 checks before the game forces you to draw. But it also gives you an important ideas that you can use in your games. You can see that throughout the whole position, I used my rook and king in order to block off their king from moving around. I was restricting squares so that he has less of an influence, and I could get myself into an advantageous position. This is something that you can put into your games. Now, again, I would recommend studying these. Something you can do if you really want to study these is go into chess.com, go to Learn, Analysis, Setup, Clear Board, and then put your king down, put their king down, and then you can put down a rook, you can put down two rooks, and then go down to Finish versus Computer. And from there, you can just play it off. And now we can go through the game as you see. And you see it's checkmate. And you can just keep practicing this. Of course, black was playing only at computer 5. It didn't play the best moves in the position. But you can practice these endgames against a computer. And I'd honestly recommend just drilling them into your mind until you will never forget them. And you can even start maybe even pre-moving them. But if you're a new player, these are definitely some things you should know. Anyway, that's the first lesson. I'll be going over other endgames, but if there's something you want me to cover, for example, you want me to cover tactics or a certain opening, send me a message. Peace.